Welcome to another installment of Views from an Old Polish Perspective. Here we are, early November 2023, and I thought it'd be fun to go back and do kind of review of 2023. Actually, this all started from coming up with some ideas of what these fact checkers could be looking into to actually do some good. I don't know if you read the COVID relief bill, but in the COVID relief bill in 2021, they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to some choice companies to keep their fact checkers employed during the COVID shutdown. Well, you know what companies they were, and those companies actually gave some pretty heavy donations to a couple of choice states to put in drop boxes for mail-in ballots and all that kind of stuff. So, we still got in 2023 the problem or questions with, the election and ballots and everything. So, 2023 Urban Dictionary, we got to redefine, they actually redefine insurrection, which basically means questioning ballots signed by dead people. I don't have to explain that. It's gone through, so it's now. Then they had to throw in, of course, the race card. It's racist to question how dead people could vote. Okay, how'd they come up with that? Well, this is about the best Democrats can come up with. Now, this is it. Start off with fact checkers should look into something important and that resulted in almost an endless list. One of the things is we're seeing the Trump trial and how a judge and DA can play real estate appraiser after Congress passed laws in 2008 on training and licensing real estate appraisers with stiff penalties for not following the law. In other words, it's illegal for someone to pretend they are an appraiser for obvious reasons. Actually, to get a broker's license, you have to pass an exam, and they ask you all these questions about when these laws were introduced and everything and why they were, was basically to make sure the 2008 real estate crash didn't happen again, because appraisers were working with lenders and all this other stuff, and they wanted to make sure that never happened again. So they created all these classes and licensing and everything for real estate appraisers. And now we've got a judge and a DA that say, well, okay, the law doesn't apply to them. Why? Because, anyway, we'll take a look into that. That's got to be questioned. And here they go, they put Trump in front of a judge that just happens to be an expert on pre-revolutionary King's Law. This guy is pulling stuff out of the books from 1600s and everything else, even way before the United States became a nation. And he thinks it's perfectly okay for him to decide which laws should apply and which laws don't apply. And in school, we learned about England sending over judges to determine who could own land and how much it was worth. Well, in school, we learned that pissed off a whole lot of people back in those days. And, the results. So, anyway, we've got this DA, and we got to look at the lessons that we learn from these things. A lesson on communist equality for all you trolls. Pay attention, trolls. This woman is paid to post on social media, and she makes millions of dollars. Somehow, on her $140,000 salary, she's got millions in the bank. Homes, cars, all this stuff. How did she get it? Well, all those nickel communist trolls get paid squat for posting their stuff on the internet. So tell me again how communism is making all of you equal. It's a question. Good question to ask. The trolls got to ask that one. Okay, so fact checkers should look into something important like, are all those Democrat socialists who are getting rich under Biden really going to share their funds with all the commies and make everyone equal like they say they are? Is that really going to happen? Let's get the fact checkers to look into that one. They're getting paid by our tax dollars anyway, so let's have them look into something important. Okay, then we've got this problem with the Muslims rising up here after the problem between Hamas and Israel. Anyway, if we look back, there was a really close connection between the Nazis and the Muslims, radical Muslims. Not all of them, but if you look back in your history, half the Muslims sided with the Allies, half of them sided with the Nazis. Kind of like Ukraine. Ukraine was split on that, and there's some stuff we really need to look at deeper into that. But right now we're seeing the radicalized, Naziized, radical Muslims that, think Hitler was right. They had something in common. They had a common goal, and now we're seeing an uprising in that. We got to look into why we're seeing an uprising on that. Okay, so the fact checkers should look into something important like, how did thousands of Palestinian protesters show up all over the world with hundreds of flags and signs hours after Hamas attacked Israel? Within hours. And they called for a ceasefire. They actually called for that ceasefire before Israel retaliated. How did that happen? Anyway, fact checkers, look into that. We want the answer by the end of the week. Okay, then we also look at a couple other facts, like, for instance, back in the 1930s and the 1940s, Hitler was taking over these nations and calling it a humanitarian act. It's right there in the history books. And didn't Hitler demand a ceasefire after invading his first few countries? When we see history like this repeating, we really got to start asking some questions. So fact checkers, get to work. We're paying you. Okay, and then we got to look at the obvious. What did they do? They declared this holy war. And after 2 weeks, what is their country? What does Gaza look like? Now, when you see something like this, and you claim God is on your side, and you take a look around in your neighborhood, maybe you should use that real life experience to kind of take a look at what obvious point is God trying to make with you. Okay, just a suggestion. Okay, and then we've got the other side of it. There's all kinds of sides to this story. Democrats are realizing they lost control of some of the radical groups they enlisted. Not only these radical Muslims who are siding with the Nazis, they are losing control of the other radical groups they all recruited. They thought if they could put all of these people together and get this big army together, they'd be able to take over the United States. Well, guess what? They with Biden in control and the people they have, they're just, these radical groups are looking at them and are going, these people are idiots. Why would we follow them? It's time for us to rise up. We don't need them. So, this no justice, no peace. Where did we see this before? Come on, they're kind of like recycling their old banners. And here we go again. All these nice printed signs, all these flags, all this stuff, and if you can see half of these flags, you can see right through them. They're cheap Chinese knockoff flags, and some of them are, look like real flags, but where did they get them all? And the other obvious question is, why are most of them wearing masks? Seems like Democrats like to enlist people who like to wear masks. So Anyway, when we look back to the 1940s, we see this union. And the thing about it is they can be pretty patient. You know, let's just wait 70 or 80 years and they'll welcome us back in with open arms. And we see all of these college professors and all this stuff that have been, I mean, these guys are like, you know, they're insane. Anyway, fact checkers, take a look at this. We want to find the answer. Did Iran threaten the U.S. before or after Joe sent them $6 billion? We got to look at this timing because typically Democrats will, a lot of mistakes that Democrats make will show up in the timing. Kind of like they send out press releases and the news will read a press release before it happens. You know, that's happened a couple of times, and I think they slipped up on this one too. So fact checkers, look into that. Okay. And anyway, Democrats always want to put a positive spin no matter how badly they screw up. And the thing about it is, with talking about the draft and all this other stuff, you know, not only are they getting a generous kickback from all these wars they're getting us involved in, when they start the draft, their job numbers are going to skyrocket. And fact checkers should look into this too. Who the hell is coming in across the border and how much is it actually costing us? Good thing for the fact checkers to look into. I mean, come on, man, we're paying you guys. Let's get to work. And they should also look into a couple of other details about the border, like the relationship between the open border and the increased crime rate. That'd be an interesting statistic to put on your fact checking. And another one is the relationship between the open border and increased drug overdoses. Come on, let's start looking at some important facts here, okay? Okay, and talking about the open border and facts, life is a bitch when you walk 3,000 miles for a free home, new car, and $3,000 a month to find out your free home is an apartment shared by 100 terrorists, and crime is so high you can't leave the apartment. Your children are taken away and sold. Your free car turns out to be a moped that someone stole on the first day. And the guy who invited you here to the U.S. ruined the economy so bad that your $3,000 a month buys less than the $1,000 a month you got back in the country you left. I mean, come on. Fact checkers, you should be putting up facts like this. And then we got to get the big city mayors involved too. Dear Joe, we want our cut. Signed, big city mayors. You know, I mean, this is just evidence that, you know, they make these decisions, they force it upon us, even though we as taxpayers don't want anything to do with it. And then it shows they have absolutely no plan to deal with it. Common sense should tell you, you get 100,000 people into your city, you need so many more police, you need so many more teachers, you need so many more classrooms, you need so many more doctors, hospitals, ambulances, you got to deal with water, electricity, all of this stuff. You got to have, it's called infrastructure. I mean, come on, they passed this bill to rebuild the infrastructure for the entire United States, spending trillions of dollars, and they got no plan. I mean, we don't even know where to start, but that's where the fact checkers should put their interest into, put their time and interest and our money into, is coming up with answers for these questions. My dad always said, don't complain unless you have a better idea. Well, fact checkers, we want you to start doing your job, check these facts, and come up with some answers, because obviously the people that were elected that are in Congress and the White House can't come up with any answers. So someone's got to come up with them. Okay, so they should look into something important like what happened to that $4 billion donated to BLM in the name of equity. Last I saw, they bought a couple $1 million homes, some new plane, boats, cars, and they're enjoying the good life themselves, which is exactly like communism works. The people on top get all the money and everybody underneath is like equal under them. So fact checkers, you should point that out. Okay, what percentage of crimes are committed by suspects released on a signature bond? We see this time and time again in video after video after video. As a matter of fact, there was a video about a DA that was carjacked by a criminal they decided to release back into the public. And we're seeing more and more of these stories coming about. What percentage? I mean, realistically, I'm just guessing, but probably 80% of the crimes that are committed by the same people these DAs and these judges are letting back out in the streets. That's my guess, but fact checkers, check it. Prove me wrong. Another important thing to take a look at: how Congress under Pelosi spent $22 trillion in 2 years. Because they did spend $22 trillion in 2 years, and come 2023, the first thing they had to do is scramble around to find more money to keep the government running. What happened to the $22 trillion worth of bills passed under Pelosi? I think this is pretty important to look into, so let's look into it, fact checkers. Okay, another thing you might want to look into, because you're always complaining about the Second Amendment: what happened in countries after governments took control of firearms? Come on, we want to know. Look into it. Let us know what you find. Okay, another thing, a question we got to ask is why every Democrat votes the exact same way on every bill in Congress. I'm not going to speculate on that, but fact checkers, let's dig into it and find out why. Okay, another important thing to look into: did drug overdoses decrease in blue cities that legalized drugs? Like they promised, that was their plan. They're going to solve the drug problem by legalizing drugs. Did it work? Okay, look into it. Let's find out. Report back. Okay, here's a really important one, especially if you're on Social Security, a fixed income, or trying to raise kids, or just trying to live in anywhere in the world after that fixed election. How prices can triple, and Democrats calculate that into a 3% inflation rate. I mean, yeah, okay, did that really happen? Did prices really go up since 2020? Come on, fact checkers, let's get all the facts together and take a look at something with some solid evidence. Okay, here's one that we should be asking, and this is just one to throw out there that isn't really that important, but why the radical LGBTQ faction would even care about abortions when there is no way they can ever get pregnant. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Look into it, find out why. Okay, now here's something you really need to look into: is cross-check the Epstein Island flight logs to people who protested against the movie Sound of Freedom. All right, get to work. Okay, now here's a good one to look into, and this might take a little digging, so we'll give you until the end of the year. How members of Congress made hundreds of stock investments over the last 12 years, let's take, and never once lost a dime. I mean, I think we would all like to find the answer to that, because we'd all like to become millionaires just like people in Congress. Okay, here's a good one. Fact checkers look into this right away. What did Ukraine spend $120 billion on? And let's get some detailed facts on this, okay? Don't give up. Come on, don't let us down. Okay, another important thing to look into. Why would one brother loan $200,000 to another brother when the other brother has millions of dollars deposited in dozens of different bank accounts all over? Yeah, okay, so I got a brother that has $4.5 million deposited in half a dozen banking accounts, and I'm going to borrow him $200,000 just because I'm a nice guy. Okay, and while you're looking into that, find out why an armed IRS looks into your financial records, I mean all of our financial records, but ignores every single Democrat with dozens of LLCs. And those LLCs have no assets, no deductions, and millions of dollars flowing in and out of them. Now, here's this obvious red flag, but how come the IRS never looks at this obvious red flag, but they'll look at your account if you deposit $600, because you work for a living? Okay. And you got to let's look at a couple of obvious red flags. Why would one family have 3 dozen LLCs with no assets, no buildings, no rent, no website, no phone numbers, no advertising, no products, not even a single tax deduction on record for that LLC? Now, if you're going to start a company, what are you going to do? Most likely you're going to have a building, some building you got to operate out of. So there should be a record of rent or purchase of a building. Most people have websites when they have a business. Most people have a phone number for that business. Most people spend advertising on that business. Most people offer a product or a service from that business. And, okay, name one person in this country that has a business, but no tax deductions for that business, not even mileage or anything. I don't know. Fact checkers, you really need to look into this because this is really getting confusing. But these are good questions. Okay, imagine a president so generous he loaned money to everyone in his family, 80% of Congress, half the governors and mayors in the U.S., plus a long list of judges and DAs. Okay, that's just kind of speculating. Just food for thought here. Okay, now let's look into the future here for a second. Take a look at what's the look on your face going to be like when you see hundreds of checks from members of Congress made out to Joe for loan repayments. Now they've already uncovered a couple of these checks, but what happens if they all of a sudden start running into hundreds of checks and all these members of Congress and the mayors and governors and all this other stuff all wrote checks out to Joe, and all put on their loan repayment. Joe the bank. Okay, and then we've got 2023. Newsom made a trip to China. What is a governor making a trip to China for? I mean, is that even legal? Okay, now Newsom. He's in California to legalize drugs. They got cities full of walking zombies and everything. And China does a lot of research. China doesn't have a whole bunch of mindless zombies for Newsom to compete against. So Xi gave them 10-year-old children. Are they testing Newsom to see how smart he is? Figured they'd start off easy. Okay, and since they got a shortage of drugged out zombies in China, Xi gave Newsom a group of 10-year-olds to impress. All right. Don't forget, he's from California. Okay, chat. Fact checkers should look into something important like exactly why the left is so afraid of Trump. I mean, come on, there's got to be a reason. Why are they afraid of Trump? And I think these fact checkers should really look into this with an open mind, with an unbiased opinion, and start coming up with a list. We already know why, but these fact checkers really need to look into it. Inquiring people gotta know. Okay, now let's look at the bright side of 2023. An imaginary bright side. We have to look at an imaginary bright side of 2023 because there's no realistic bright side of 2023. Now imagine if Congress spent $2 trillion on ending human trafficking instead of trying to control the world. Just a suggestion that we maybe should have some thought behind this out of control government spending to actually do some good with the money. Now, world peace is so easy. It requires only two things. Number one, leaders who can think. And number two, leaders who care about the people they are responsible for. Think about that for a moment. Isn't that true? Can you argue with it? Can the fact checkers argue with it? Now, in the news, we came up, Republicans elected a Christian Speaker of the House. And the woke news went completely bizarre, claiming our democracy as we know it is under attack. Why would the left feel threatened by a Christian Speaker of the House? Fact checkers, look into that, okay? Let us know what you find. Now, the question is, remember this back when Pelosi decided to lead out with a prayer, for George Floyd and BLM and all those factions that were protesting for justice and everything? They actually had a prayer right in Congress. Now, Mike Johnson, before he began his career as Speaker of the House, had a prayer. But how many of those people that prayed for BLM and the protesters actually prayed with Mike Johnson? We gotta ask that. Okay, fact checkers, find out why. Now, then we got the other side with AOC, and the squad that are crying like little baby bitches, claiming their First Amendment rights were infringed upon because someone mentioned God a number of times in the House of Representatives. Actually, why are they so upset? Well, my guess is they're seeing 2 years of their hard work going down the drain. Okay. And we got to hand out an award for 2023, which I'm going to call the Blue City Idea of the Year. I'm not kidding. Blue City Mayor actually came up with this idea. I think it was in New York. They want to pay illegal immigrants to house other illegal immigrants in apartments the city and county are paying for. This is like the best idea that Democrats can come up with to solve the situation of the open border is causing. Hey, this is your taxpayers hard at work. You should know about it. Okay, so that's views from an old Polish perspective. If you liked it, hit the like button, leave a comment, share, subscribe. Hey, this is for entertainment purposes only, but hopefully we can get it in the hands of the people we're paying to fact check, and maybe they can look into something that'll actually do this world some good. And don't forget to pray about it.